Yeah, what's good, everyone? Everybody good? Is everyone still on live? Microphone loud enough? We sent out a couple messages, let people know that we're going live. Okay, I'm going to stop the music. GM. See if I can get a screen up here while I'm doing a couple things, sending out a couple messages. How's everyone doing today? Okay, so majors are having a bit of a bounce. We love to see it. Just going to pop this screen up for a moment while it gets situated. Actually, you know what? I'll leave it back on the other one for a minute. We've got a decent list that we're going to work through today. Had some requests come in, got about 15 or so charts. Plan to get through all of them, and had a couple questions about workflow, a couple questions about strategies as well. Definitely people are curious about how I'm marking out market structure and swing highs and swing lows, so we'll get into that. Just bear with me for a minute while I get this all situated. Dun, dun. Okay. Okay. Had the stream has single-handedly fixed sleep schedule power naps, that said. Aligning you more with Western time zones on the East Coast, more with the New York market timing. Although I'm up a lot of the day. So I'm gonna show my main workstation screen again for part of the stream, and then also because there were some issues with the quality, I'm gonna also try sharing a more direct screen for when I'm doing the charts. Hopefully it comes through a little bit clearer. I feel like the first stream went off decent. It was a little long. Apologies to everyone that was there and watched for the 4 hours or watched the replays for the 4 hours. It's a bit long. We're going to keep it shorter today. I think my goal will be 2 hours or less in general for each stream, to be respectful of people's time. I think it was just the first one I was excited and had lots to talk about and lots to try and lots of different concepts to try and get across. But I'll make sure that with each stream that we're going over a lot of the core concepts repeatedly, because that's really what looking at a chart and performing TA is. It's just a repetitive system, and it's definitely a lot of hours spent behind charts, a lot of hours spent looking at charts, a lot of hours spent watching candlestick prints, and that's really how you get to grips with it over time. Because for myself personally, I mean, this has been a journey, and I still try to learn a little bit every day. I'm not perfect, but I have a solid grasp of the system that I use and what it is that I look for. So it's just constantly practicing and watching candles print, watching charts. But I mean, that's just one part of the job. The main part of the job is discovery. You can mark up a chart all you want, but if the token is no good, the chart's not going to work out. You can't account for things like teams and community and bundles and snipes and people rugging. Like, these are all outside of the chart that are things that you have to be aware of. And I find the best way for discovery is, one, having a solid network, a group of guys or girls, a solid group of people that you've got in the trenches showing up every day and with their own unique skill sets and set of networks that sort of combine together to help you out to stay on top of the market, because it really does move incredibly fast. I mean, this morning we had that RTR token, which may or may not, most likely not, be related to Trump, and things like that just have a tendency of absorbing attention, absorbing liquidity. And you have to really think fast. You have to think on your feet, but having a solid group around you that can help to fill in some of the gaps or provide some answers or intel, it goes a long way. So, I mean, that's one area where I perform a lot of my discovery and due diligence, but also having tools at our fingertips like ChainEDGE is a massive leg up, especially when you're using it to follow where smart money is putting their capital and letting it sit and expecting a higher return in the future. All in real time, all live. So it's having tools like this at your disposal. And I mean, there's many, many tools available out there. And I've tried a lot of them. And I continue to try different tools. Like recently, Deck Screener had been sort of acting up for me. So then I went looking for other platforms to do charting and discovery and managing watch lists and whatnot. Still on the hunt for the perfect tool for that. I mean, I do a lot of my charting on Photon. I've recently started using a platform called GMGN, which is actually quite a nice tool. Still talking with the team to try and make some improvements to it that would really help up my workflow. And that's another thing too. Like, if you find tools that you like, be in communication with the team, because if there's things you need out of these tools, if it's a quality team, they'll look to address those requests and try to incorporate them into their package. Like, take for example, like I was just talking about Deck Screener. Well, we all know that there's a tab for charts in price view versus charts in market cap view. And for the longest time, it would just default to price. And so I bugged the team. I was like, hey, it would be great if when I select market cap, as like a global setting, that's just how all my charts pop up. And what do you know? Yesterday or the day before, that got implemented. And so that's, it's these little things that help make workflow and our lives easier. So, you just approach teams and they may be receptive to implementing requests. Excuse me. Okay. Let's pull a screen up here just for a quick view. We can take a look and see what majors are looking like. Getting a decent bounce here on Bitcoin. Solana's just been crushing it, which is down over here on the right. ETH, oh my goodness. ETH has been a tough hold this cycle. Still very bullish on Ethereum, especially over a longer time horizon. Solana has a lot of tailwinds with it right now, with it being the degen casino of choice, but we can't discredit or forget about the fact of why a company or why something like BlackRock would want to greenlight ETFs for this, and what their ultimate vision of a tokenized financial world and where something like that might be hosted. And I'm willing to bet, and I have placed bets in that space accordingly, that Ethereum is where that's probably going to take place, just based off of security guarantees of the chain, infrastructure that's there, and just the type of transactions that take place. But man, it has been a tough hold, although at the moment stronger than the other majors on this bounce, but it also had a harder sell-off. So, things like that can be expected. But a really positive sign. And I think up here, if Bitcoin can reclaim, this sort of 60K area, we're looking a lot healthier than we were just a couple days ago. It's so funny though, how sentiment on CT and in group chats and whatnot can be so extreme at the lows and also incredibly euphoric at the highs. And these are things to take note of, because as much as it sounds cliche to think about, like, those are versions of a signal. And I mean, I've been in crypto long enough now, especially when monitoring majors, like, it's best to not get too caught up in their day-to-day price movements and look at the overall bigger picture. And I mean, bigger picture, provided that the global economy doesn't shit the bed, the bigger picture is still quite good for crypto. Especially when we start to think about it as access for people that normally wouldn't have access to certain financial instruments, or that are shut out of their local banking systems and whatnot. So there's a lot there. But we're not here to talk about majors. We're here to talk about shitcoins. We're here to talk about on-chain. We're here to talk about strategies. We're here to look at charts. We're here to learn some things about charts, learn what it is that I look for and how my system works. And I also want to go through some things related to my workflow. I've had people ask, okay, On-Chain Wizard talks about these portfolio summary strategies with ChainEDGE. Like, how do I dig into something like that? Had a couple questions about sizing, position sizing, and sizing against your portfolio size, as well as some ways to look to find your TP or take profit targets. So we'll look into all that stuff. Okay. Just checking for any last minute requests. Someone requested smoking chicken fish. Can definitely add that to the list. So I think how I'm going to structure this today is we'll start by going into the charts, and then after that we'll do more of the Q&A and discussion section and technicality stuff, or not technical, the more more broader strategy-based things and less so about specific to each chart. But we'll start with the charts because the request is the main thing about this show. Let me just add SCF to this list. And we'll get underway. Okay, I'm going to switch screen now because we'll come back to this stuff a little bit later. So let me switch the screen that I've got going on. Let's see my PFP again. For anyone that's curious, when I asked AI to create this one for me, and my prompt was, I don't know how many of you have seen the movie Hook, but my prompt was an on-chain degen Rufio, with probably a couple other words mixed in there. And this was one of the images that it popped out and spit out. And I sort of thought that it was perfect. So that's what that is. Okay. So I'm going to share. How can I share that? Oh, here we go. I share from here. And boom. Okay, so this is the watch list that we've got for today. Okay, someone's asking, where on the site do you see the pre-approved thing that featured the new ChainEDGE feature? You know what, to be honest with you, I've seen it talked about in the ChainEDGE Discord a little bit, and I haven't looked into it yet. Our devs are constantly working in the background, and they'll push things out before myself or even before Onchain Wizard even knows that it's been pushed out. So when we get to the ChainEDGE part of the stream, and we look at that a little bit more, we can try and find out, and we'll see what that's all about. But at the moment, let's take a look at what we got going on here. So this is the watch list, or the request list that people put through. I've also added a few things that were notable recently. And we'll get through all of these pretty quickly. And along the way, I'll show, how I'm looking for market structure and different demand zones or supply zones and what I'm looking for. Okay, so some of you probably noticed in the cover art for this episode, there was a little minion on a cross, or a Jesus minion. That was actually a token that popped up yesterday. Actually, a buddy of mine in one of our group chats had sent it in as a GIF in one of the chats, just as a joke, and then almost like half an hour later, this token randomly pops up, which was pretty funny. And the lads caught that one pretty early. So just kind of funny how rapidly crypto responds to popular trends and memes and stuff like that, especially on Solana with how fast things get deployed. So we'll get through this list. So let's start with the highest volume on the day. So as I was mentioning before, that RTR token that launched, which, I mean, I'm pretty skeptical that it's an official Trump coin, but the narrative around it was very similar to how the DJT token launched. Okay, so make this smaller so the chart is bigger. We don't really need to see the transactions while we're doing this. So as a new token, high volume, super high volume, 105 million volume already on the day. Tagged a high of, let's zoom out, different time, just try and see where we can start seeing some structure. So what I do is I zoom out to like the highest time frame that I'm starting to see swing points, and I mark those out just for fast reference. But massive wick there. Must have been a large cluster of selling that occurred. Now, I'm not telling you to bid this token because, I mean, it hit a high of 156 million. It's down about 50% from that. I have no idea if it's real. To be honest, I don't think it is, but I mean, immediately what I see is this sort of cluster here, because I would discredit this particular wick as part of market structure because it was obviously some sort of massive selling and potentially MEV involved. I can see that here. So I would call this sort of the swing low on the 15-minute. We had a initial swing high that was eventually broken, and this would be the swing low to me that broke that. So that's why this is our 15-minute structure. I can outline this here too. So that's essentially, oh, let me mute this because I don't want these alerts going off throughout the stream. Kind of distracting. Just one of my alert bots that I have set up. Actually, I can probably just hold on. Oof. Big selling into the demand there on M15. N15 is 15 minutes. Sort of old school trader speak. I learned a lot from guys that have been around the biz for a long time and with the old school sort of terminology. Okay, so it's actually in M15 demand right now, which is this area that I highlighted right here with this box. If this is, I mean, this is a big F, and also 15-minute time frame is pretty low signal. As I mentioned last time, the higher the time frame you go, the higher the signal becomes, or the stronger the signal becomes. But I mean, you could expect some sort of bounce in here. So what I basically did was I just looked, and that's a really tiny demand zone, but it's just based off of where the swing point was. So yeah, that's on this particular chart what I would look at. I'm not going to spend too much time on this one. What we can do is we can even throw up the fib. I really wish there was a way to permanently remove volume filters on charts on Deck Screener. I don't really use them. I mostly just use volume as a indicator of attention and for discovery, but in terms of being on the chart, I rarely look at volume. The only time I might is in a moment of aggressive selling, because often those volume spikes will occur in heavy volatility moments. But on something like this, I'm not going to put too much weight in it. So we can draw the fib. What I do is I draw from the bottom to the top. So something that stands out to me as well is how close the pocket is to this demand. So I wouldn't be surprised if it's going to hold, that it might even just spike through that and come back up. We also have the 786 down here, which kind of aligns with this other breakout level from earlier that actually tagged perfectly on that massive wick there. But those are areas that I'd highlight. Is the picture quality any better today than last time? Or is it still kind of foggy a little bit? I haven't been able to figure out why that's the case. My internet connection is pretty solid. I mean, I do use VPNs, so maybe it has something to do with that. But okay, I have a question here. Actually, you know what I've realized is that actually if I click on something, it'll actually show the person's question. Ha! Look at that. Beautiful. So the question, do you use Deck Screener's TG thing for oh, no, I don't use their TG alert thing. I found it very cumbersome because what you have to do is actually go into the Telegram, paste the CA, and then input your parameters there versus on the website itself, or even on the app, on the mobile app, you can input alerts directly on there. And they'll fire across multiple devices. And actually, there is a little bit of a trick because I find that browser alerts are kind of garbage. Like they just either won't trigger or they won't alert you to it, and it'll just kind of get lost in the mix. You can actually download the mobile app. Now, this is on Mac, so I'm not sure about on a PC, but you can actually download the mobile app and set it so that notifications are on, and you can actually receive alerts from the mobile app installed on your computer, but then still just do your charting on the desktop. You can input your alert settings and whatnot from the desktop, from the browser. Yeah, so in terms of alerts, I kind of have a love-hate relationship. Sorry, you guys probably heard that vibrate. I'm going to turn that off too, because I know if I'm ever watching a stream, that gets annoying as well. I just want to eliminate all distractions. I think if I put it on that setting, it should be fine. I have a love-hate relationship with alerts because I've used them extensively in the past. Trouble is when you're looking at so many charts, you start forgetting what they were about. So then I got into the habit of really being pretty specific with what the labels for the alert was, and that definitely helps. But I found what's a better strategy, especially since tokens move so fast, is for things that I'm looking for a high time frame. Yes, I'll put in an alert on that, and maybe even have a limit order set. But for brand new stuff that moves really quickly, you just need to be locked in on those charts throughout the day, because really, the chance of them surviving past the 24 to 48 hour window, even beyond a couple hour window, is pretty slim. So you just kind of have to be monitoring in real time and be ready for those entries. And if something starts to get close, just leave that chart up and be focused specifically on that rather than jumping around, and sort of rely on your group chats and whatnot to bring, if there's something new and noteworthy that you should be focused on, just to rely on them bringing them to your attention. And also having a lot of monitor or desktop real estate helps. You don't need to be extreme or anything like that, but having like one area, one screen that's specifically geared towards chats and things that you want to have in focus, and then another area or desktop monitor, whatever you're using, that's specifically for charts. And the bigger the better for that scenario, because then you can sort of panel it that you have multiple windows viewable at one time rather than having to switch tabs. I find that helps a lot. Actually, the way that I kind of do it is I split. I have one really, really big monitor that is where I do a lot of my trade work, like my trading, the trading part of what I do. And then I kind of have that split into an ETH side and a Solana side. So that way I can monitor both chains and activity at the same time. If I can pull up the ChainEDGE site to know the quality. Yeah, I think we'll get to that when we get to that. And if it's too grainy, then I'll do more of this specific window in focus rather than doing the full screen share. Okay, so I mean, look, it's bouncing here. It's kind of what you'd want to see into this demand zone, whether it goes up or not. I mean, personally, I think the trade was, well, I think I got my first alert on this. I was first alerted to it the first couple minutes of trading. It was already at 40 million over here. So the trade was somewhere in there once you realized how thick the liquidity was and what the narrative around it was. Could be a trade here, but personally, I'm going to avoid this. I feel like the market's already kind of moved on from it. Okay, and so shall we. Let's move on to banana tape wall, which has been a massive runner, especially yesterday. It went from like sub 2 mil all the way up to what I can see here is almost 18 million. So quite a run. And it was a token that had a decent balance accumulation on ChainEDGE. So there's some signal that was there if you were monitoring it. But what really was the catalyst on this one was the meme of it and guys taping bananas and legit themselves to, I believe it was a van or something like that, dressed in a banana suit, which is pretty wild. So we'll zoom out on this. Sort of the highest time frame. Okay, so I can see daily has some structure. Like if we're looking here, like as I said before, like I'll outline let's just start fresh so you can see what I'm doing. So on daily, I can see right away there's a demand zone here. I'm not saying it's going to come back here. It would have to take a pretty big shock. And if/when that occurs, you'd have to evaluate whether there was still staying power in the meme or not. But I mean, there's daily demand right there, hovering around, just under 6 million. Zoom out even more. Oh, why did that not stay? Current interval and below. And also, like, I use these tools pretty quick. I'm pretty fast with using them because it's what I do all day long. Okay, I need to mute a few other alerts on my end because they're buzzing in my ear. And I don't want that. So I'm going to mute them. Just a couple ChainEDGE alerts actually going off. But my focus right now is on this stream. So 12-hour, similar demand. We can come down to 4-hour. We can mark this out as the Pico high. Yeah, I mean, structure-wise, it would be fine for it actually to come down here and bounce. I don't know if it's ever going to come that low. And once you get something moving this fast, like it was yesterday, what I would suggest in that moment is switching down to lower time frames. Like what we can see right here, I often talk about market structure. Well, on the hourly, first of all, it came into hourly demand here. But if you were like, oh, I don't know if I want to buy this, like it's come down so low. And that's the psychological component that gets difficult is when price comes down so far and you're looking at it and being like, oh, that's pretty gnarly. Like I'm just sort of hesitant to try and buy here. Well, if you're not going to take the first trigger, which would have been buying into that demand, then you want to look for things where the structure is starting to shift again, right? So we had here a swing high, and this was your range. From here to here was the range. You had a swing high, which then you got an hourly candle that broke above it. So all of a sudden you had a market structure shift. And what you do in that moment is you look for demand, which was right here. And there was your entry trigger with a little bit of confirmation that the chart wants to go up. And so now if we're looking at this, what I see here on hourly is it swept this, swept that low. Now, sweeps can occur and not be a part of the official range. They can be within their range, but you can get SFPs there, which sort of gives you an indication of price not wanting to close below or price not wanting to close above. Oh, comment tab, can I minimize? Yes, sorry, there we go. Done. What you can look for is a willingness or an acceptance, a willingness to close above or below, or an acceptance. That's really what swing points are, is you're just looking, okay, price got to that level, what's happening? Well, buyers stepped in here, which is showing the opposite of willingness, a non-willingness to close below that level. So this could be the level that you're really looking for, even though it's not actually the hourly range. We can see here, it just had a bunch of sweeps. So you're kind of getting a mirror image on both ends. The true bottom of the hourly range is down here. That's a long distance though. I mean, if you're looking at that, that's almost a 300% range. And back down towards it, like if you're gonna really look at that as your swing point, I mean, for hourly, before hourly fails the structure, you actually have a minus 70% move from the top of the structure. And the reason why I'm not counting these as structure, as we've gone over before, the structure is the swing high. Nothing is closed above, like the initial swing high that gets created. Nothing is closed above. And yes, there was a swing high point here, but there was no swing low that created it. The swing low was still down here. So that's really your range. But we can see that this demand is actually holding for now, right here. It's not the Pico bottom of the range demand, but it is an area of demand where there was some chop and then buyers stepped in and shoved it higher. So early warnings that this doesn't want to hold would be starting to lose, first of all, this swing level here, but then losing this box. The problem is, like, you're not invalidated to all the way down here. So anything in this range, if you can try and buy, the lower you can buy, the better. because obviously your risk reward is a lot higher the closer to invalidation that you can buy at. For now, if you're holding this coin and you're wondering, do I sell? What do I do? I would look to see, because it looks like it wants to come back up here. If it gets up here and it starts giving you a lot of wicks again, probably an indication that maybe it's cooling quite a bit. It's a type of coin that you need to stay on top of what the team behind the meme or how the internet's responding to the meme is. Are there any questions about that particular what I've been showing here and why I'm marking out different areas, or should I just speed along to the next? I think we'll just speed along to the next. We can also circle back on these towards the end of the stream too to see how they're faring. I can also see, actually, if I move this, yeah. So there's another thing. So there's supply demand. There's also things called FFGs, or fair value gaps, which is an area where price accelerated so rapidly or expanded so much that it left a gap where price only traded up. And those areas are often retested. And we can see that this wick down pretty close to it. It didn't quite come down to it. I wonder no, it doesn't even have an H. So it's an H4 fair value gap. Came pretty close and bounced. So that's something I'd monitor. Okay. Rap Dog. So this one was requested. Here's an old, I'll update this, but I guess what's best for me to do is when I'm doing these to start fresh with you guys. You guys can see what I'm doing. Let's remove drawings. And yes, gotta love that deck screener implemented that, because I was very frustrated how every time I'd open a chart, I'd have to click the market cap tab. But I love it when a team listens to requests. So let's see what our highest time frame with structure is. Yeah, I think it's probably H4. There's not even much here on H4. I mean, we have some chop here, which is highlighted on the H1. So that's sort of where the demand is. Now, here's the thing. Your H1 structure, your hourly structure, which is the highest time frame structure, this was your range. And we can see that it closed below. Now, why is that the range? That was the low that created the high, creating a higher high above this point. And we can see that over here, this never did that. So the demand and range was down here, and we got to close below. So we've actually had an hourly market structure shift, which as soon as it closed below, you can see that it came up, tagged it again, and rejected. Now it may be finding consolidation down here. And in fact, we actually had a secondary hourly lower low here. So really the range on hourly there's the bottom of your range right now. And this is the top of your range right now, based off of the deck screener chart. I mean, each platform is a little bit different, which is a frustrating thing in crypto, is that there's no uniformity across platforms often. What you'll find is that one platform has wicks here or there versus another one doesn't have them. And a lot of the times what that comes down to is the MEV sandwich attacks and how the platform handles those wicks. I find the better the platform, the better they are at minimizing those wicks by sort of, I guess they're probably using an algorithm that when it detects a sandwich attack, it tries to figure out what the real price action was and not the sandwich attack. And that's generally, like when I'm looking for a proper charting platform, how they handle MEV wicks is one of the first things I look for. I mean, we've all seen those charts where there's just like a massive thing. And then when you're looking at the chart, it's like this compressed and there's a massive wick here or here, and it just distorts the whole thing. And you can't really rely on that as price action, because truthfully, the chart never traded in that area. The only time I find those useful is, for those psychological games of, oh, fill the wick, that we see on Twitter and all those places. Okay, so if I were to say this is an area of demand here, but it's in an H1 bearish downtrend, nothing above has structure, so it's sort of tough. I guess if I was just looking at H4, I'd be like, okay, where's the fib draw to? And look at that, it tagged the 786 perfectly and it's given a bounce. So that's one of those scenarios where if on higher time frames you're looking and there isn't a discernible structure, but on lower time frames it's lost some structure, but you're thinking, okay, this probably still has some juice in it. Well, then you want to be looking for those things like the golden pocket, which is these orange bars here on mine, or the 786, which is this yellow, gray level here. And you can see it tagged it almost perfectly and it's given a reaction. Now, this was a super popular coin like 2 days ago. And the reaction was, you didn't even get a 2x off of that. Slightly larger market cap coin, liquidity ratio is pretty decent. You could probably think, okay, had you bought that very bottom, you could go on to hold this for a little while and not really concern yourself too much with the hourly structure until it starts getting up here, because that's your first target for TP on a coin like that. Now it hasn't even reached that, and technically it's sort of come into a supply zone. Well, not technically, it is a supply zone. And we talked about last time what a supply zone area is a place where people thought they were buying the low or thought they were buying the dip, and then it sliced through. And oftentimes what you'll get is people going, okay, how can I get out as close to break even as possible, especially in a market that moves as fast as Solana. Like, this is something to think about. A difference between a chain like Solana and a chain like Ethereum is because there's so many coins that launch on Solana and the attention dilution is very real and you have to move quickly. As soon as you get something like structure broken and you have these built-in supply areas, people are going to look to Jeet as soon as they're getting back to as close to break even as possible. It's just the reality of the chain. Whereas on Ethereum, where there's a lot less tokens launched, a lot of these levels will get respected a lot more faithfully, just based on the very nature of the chain. So yeah, this is what I'd look for here, your range. If you were thinking, okay, maybe I want to buy this, where would I get in? I'd try to get in back as close to this level, the swing low, as possible, or even the bottom of the demand area, sort of like a sweep. And the sweep would sort of indicate, okay, price is showing an unwillingness to close below there. Well, then there's probably a decent chance that it's going to try and go back to the top of the range. So that's what I'd monitor on that. Oh, someone's saying, check out RTR. Let's take a look. Did it just nuke? Is it nuking? Oh, oh! And that, my friends, is why on Solana, sometimes you just have to move really quickly. Yeah, I mean, I had a feeling just based off the way people were talking about it, like, this is probably not a coin you want to hold. I can see that on ChainEDGE, wallets were holding almost $2 million worth of the token in balance. Well, now they're probably sitting at, several thousand. Is what it is. That's amazing. Love to see it. I mean, I don't love to see it, but what I mean is I just, that's part of the game. And I just find these things kind of hilarious when they happen. It's part of the game. And that's why being early on Solana is really important. And also listening to some, having a trusted network and people being like, okay, we think it's probably a scam at this point. Okay, moving on. Because we are going a bit slow. We're already reaching an hour. Good God. Although I started maybe 15 minutes late. So we'll go for 2 hours and 15-ish today. Okay. Fuku or fuck you, I don't know. This was one that on ETH popped up and has been showing decent strength. Not really getting, so yeah, let's go highest time frame and work backwards. So hourly, immediately, you can see here, there was a swing point, and here, the high. Also, I can see that here was your demand. Price came right down into it and bounced off of it because this was your swing low. This was your swing low. The low that created the high, creating a higher high because it broke above that level. So that was a good area there. Excuse me. Also, guys, let me know if like how I'm describing what it is that I'm looking for in ranges makes sense, or if I need to go into more detail. Again, I'll drill this home every time, like market structure, market structure, market structure, how to find those swing lows and swing highs and define your range. Because once you can understand the concept of ranges and market structure, the rest of it all becomes so much easier and simpler. Because if you're buying with the trend, you have a lot more tailwinds than if you're buying against trend. Now, you're not going to be the hero buying the exact bottom, but that's not what I'm here for. There's so many opportunities in this market that if you're looking for those buying with trends, if you're looking to buy with the trend and you just compound your gains and you look for solid 2, 3, 5x's. I mean, even yesterday with that BTW token, there was like a 10x or something on that, maybe even more, might have been even 18x or something. So if you pick your moments, you don't need to be worried about trying to find the bottom. I mean, it's great if that's the type of trader you want to be and you're really locked in that way. But I've just found for myself that buying with the trend is generally a better strategy. Okay, so we can see it's sort of sweeping this high. So I'd be aware of this on hourly that, okay, it's attempting this high again, and it's so far seeing some selling there, which is, typical. You get people that maybe rode price on their first leg up and got up here and didn't sell, and they saw it come down, they get nervous. It's like, oh, we're back up here. Well, maybe I'll just offload a bit. We can even see on M15, it's failing the level so far. So here's a good example of a trend within a trend, because we had the hourly bullish structure, but then on M15, it actually closed below here and broke the M15 structure, because here was the low that created the high to create a new higher high on M15, right? But as always, the higher time frame signal is much cleaner signal than lower time frame. So what you could have been doing was, okay, you marked out your hourly range, and then you drill down into M15 or M5 and say, okay, if I'm not quite confident enough to be like, okay, this is my buy on the hourly, what do we have here? You had an M5 shift in market structure, closed above, you got a retag, and then went. You didn't fully, actually, yeah, you pretty much did get a demand tag here. Now I draw my demand zones. There's different words to describe them. Some people call them order blocks. Some people call them supply and demand zones. Some people call them support and resistance. I mean, it's just a different way of saying a similar thing. It's just about how you look at them and incorporate them into your system. And I've traded on chain long enough to know, because if I were to call this an order block, what would be looked for is that people would be like, okay, this is your order block. But I've traded on chain long enough to know that I want to incorporate some of that, because if it's got the momentum, you're not going to get that full tag into there. And what did it do? You got the close above right there on hourly, and it closed above this swing level. You got a retest, and then boom, right? And this is one of those instances you're like, okay, this was a hot token that launched. I'm looking for an entry. I need to sit on this chart and wait for that trigger, because if you're looking away, this occurred over the course of 10 minutes here. If you look away, you're going to miss it. But you enter there, you've almost got a 2x on it. Not a huge move yet, but this, there's potential for it to go higher, because now you have built-in levels of new demand along the way. And here's another thing. So if you're trading on Ethereum, especially since the fees are higher, although lately negligible, you want to be looking for a minimum of 2x, because you're having to put more ETH to work, and smaller moves just aren't going to be as lucrative for you once you incorporate all the fees, slippage and whatnot. But there was a trade there. There was two versions of that trade. There's even a third if you missed it really late. But the problem is, once you miss the first and then even the second trigger, like if you've missed the second trigger, you're pretty late, because who knows where these things top out. You had another trigger here though, right? Like there was your demand, came down, tagged it, boom. Yeah. Okay, so had a question. Can I explain sweeping? So what a sweep is, or another term is a swing fail pattern. Let's see if I can get a good example of it. I probably had one here on M15. Yeah, okay. So right here, you had a high. And what occurred was, at that high, you had an attempt to claim the level above, but what it did was it swept and closed below. It's also called a swing fail pattern, meaning this is a swing point, and it fails to claim the level and closes below. And then as you can see, once that occurred, it sold off. Now, it's not always going to be so cut and dry. You may just sell off a little bit and then immediately right after attempt to go for it again. But a sweep is to either side, because we can also see, were there any downside sweeps? I don't see any downside sweeps here, maybe on M5. Yeah, so here's another one. This is an example of a sweep right there. You also had an example. Oh, no, it didn't actually catch that one. But that's an example of a sweep. Came down, price refused to close below that level, buyer stepped in, and you had a bit of a move. Not a great move, because that's maybe like, by the time you get that sweep and you've noticed that it closed above, so say you're buying somewhere around here, I mean, what are you going to do with a 30% move on ETH unless you're putting in 10K, right? So these are things to look out for. Can I look at Billy? Yep, I'll look at Billy's on the list. Oh, thank you very much, Power Naps, for responding. Okay, so that's this chart. We'll come back to this a little bit later and see how things are unfolding. Since I got the request for Billy, let's go to it now. Let's take a look. So Billy had been one of the strongest coins about a month ago, right? It had this huge run up. I mean, from the opening of it, I would call this the top, because this over here, it just looks like a double top pattern. So, I mean, no one's getting that entire move, but what is that? 101.74 million%. Wonderful. Gotta love crypto. But let's say you were like, okay, down and around here. Like that's, 700% move on decent size is okay. You're not upset about it. So let's clear this off, start fresh. I think I can even go to weekly on this to start, because there's enough chart history. And I'll just mark out the weekly levels that I immediately see. Okay, so daily, it lost structure a while ago. There was your first break. Actually, we don't have another break from there. So what we can actually say is, okay, this is your daily range now, which is daily in bearish structure and threatening lower. Did it even close below this? Let's take a look. So also when you're looking at a chart, history matters, especially for a coin when it gets to a larger market cap. I mean, it's around 50 mil right now. At its peak, it was 200 and just under 30. So when you look at things like this, you can look for sweeps on this side, even if it's outside of the current structure, because the sweep here would have meant, okay, maybe buyers are thinking this is a good level, but you actually got to close below. And now we're seeing some fall through on that. So in terms of this, it depends on like where are you? Ni hao ma. I hope I didn't butcher that, but I feel like that was kind of close. Are you in this token right now? Or are you debating whether you should enter it? What is your questioning based around? Because my answer would be different. Wait for him to respond. Okay, well, I'll just proceed based off two different versions of what I'd look for. If I'm in this token and I'm like down quite a bit, like depending on where I got in, but say I was like, oh, this is super bullish, like made a new high, I'm going to buy in around here. And then, oh shit, we lost the level. I mean, it's kind of tough, because when you're sitting down here, given that you've already came this far low, if I'm holding, I would wait to see what happens when it retests this level, because it very well could just be putting in a double bottom and spike this level. If it closes below this, man, just get out, because it's not looking pretty. But if you get a daily sweep, or if it manages to hold this range, I would just wait to see what happens. And then ultimately, I mean, right now, this area right here is overhead supply on this range. So if you're in this and you're wondering what to do, when it gets up into here, could be a good idea to look to exit. Now, it may from there decide, okay, I'm super bullish and go on to back to all-time highs. But what you could do is de-risk in here, and if it closes above this level on daily, you could look to re-enter on some sort of retest, which you won't have the greatest entry because it's, you're giving up some, but you could be rebuying on an uptrend rather than not selling here, thinking, oh, it's going to go clips the top and then comes down and just nukes on you, so that's what I'd be looking for. If I'm thinking about entering, I would try to enter as close to this level as possible, preferably on some sort of sweep of the low, because right here, right now, it could go either way. You're not quite in the middle. Like there's a phrase that people say, which is don't diddle in the middle. Given that this is your range, there's a middle here, but there's also a swing high right here that I could look for as an interim area to watch out for, because if you start getting closes above here, it's probably getting more bullish, I think. But you have the supply here, so it's tough because you could just be buying here only to go for that size of a move. It's easier on Solana because the fees are so low and you can get it out really quickly. Liquidity is decent on this one. I mean, it's okay. Ideally you want like that 10% sort of sweet spot, but it is what it is. So if I was looking to buy this, I would wait for a sweep. And if it closes back above, your risk is defined, because if it does end up closing below this level, you just get out. Or to be truly buying with the trend, the unfortunate thing is that you would need a daily close above here, and then you could buy in here, looking for a higher low somewhere in there to go on for a higher high. But for now, that's sort of what you're working with. I entered a bit one day ago around 0.06. What market cap is that? Okay, so it's a little bit higher than we are now. You entered somewhere around here. Okay, well, trouble with entering up here is that your invalidation is here. So if you get daily closes down here, cut it, and you just have to sort of eat that loss, unfortunately. I mean, there's a chance it could come back and rebound, but that's not what my system works off of and what I try to teach. So at the moment, you're just sort of in for this chop ride to find out which way it wants to resolve. Yeah, I would say even if you start getting H4 closes, like if you start getting H4 closes below here, probably good early warning that maybe it's time to cut, rather than waiting for daily, because you could get down here and start getting H4, then all of a sudden it goes much lower and you don't have time to get out on a daily time frame. So that's what I would look for. Okay. Hopefully that answers your questions on that particular chart. Moving along. FWOG. FWOG had also been a really popular coin. And look, it's looking like it's put in quite a decent bounce on daily. Let's take a look and see. Just mark out the quick swing points. See, this is the thing about on-chain, and when you're dealing with MEV wicks, and that bugs me about a lot of charting platforms. You can set up a point on one time frame and then you change it and it's off a little bit. It just comes with the territory though. So there's no real, I mean, you had a demand here, you close below, but there's no swing point there on H12. It's probably an H4 level, but what I can see immediately, especially since it closed below here, if you get a close above here on H12, you're looking pretty bullish, because that would be a trend reclaim on H12. Let's go on H4. So yeah, you had Actually, as soon as on H4 it closed below here was where it lost structure, and you can see it chopped a lot and sold off more. This is looking pretty bullish and strong to me. So what I would be watching for is, now it's still a little under 6 hours away, but I'd be watching for an H12 to close above here. And also cognizant of this as well. Depends on if this is a sweep. I would say that's probably more short term, but if you get a close above this on H12, you've got bullish structure there. Let's see on H4. So the H4 low was here. So actually H4, you've actually had bullish structure reclaim right there. And so that would have been a good early trigger there, because this was the high that created the low in bullish structure. Candle closed above, tagged this demand area, and has gone up since. So who's ever was curious about this one, I would definitely be watching what happens here on H12 to signify whether this has more or not. But given that H4 is reclaimed, and the swing low is down here, I mean, you could come back all the way down here again on H4 to find a higher low, because that's really what a chart is, right? You got low, high, higher low. Well, let me move this up. You have let's say this is your range. Let me make it the colors that I usually use. Here's your range. What you're looking for is, say you're down here, you want a high. So low, high. Then what you're looking for, higher low, higher high, and so on and so forth. So then you're looking for something to come down somewhere here. And this is really a large basis for my system and what I do based around structure. Is you're looking anytime a high, say this was the previous high, this level here, and you got a bullish close, a higher high, close above, what you're looking to do is buy the higher low. It's essentially the majority of what my system is. Make a high, you're looking for the higher low, because yes, sometimes they do, especially for brand new stuff, just go straight up. But then you have to switch down to lower time frames to try and find your entries. But on a chart that's unfolding and maybe a couple days old, a couple weeks old, depending on attention and what platform you're trading on, like what chain, really what you're doing is trying to find the higher low. And the beauty of the higher low is you're buying as close to invalidation as possible, that if it fails that level, you know where you're invalidated. So you cut and get out for the least amount possible. Try to conserve your capital. And so right now, H4 made a higher high here. It can come all the way back down into here for a higher low before going on to attempt higher, or at the very least come back down here to reattempt these areas and then see what happens there. So that's what I'd look for on FWOG. Good signs, reclaimed H4. Okay, someone asked for Ginnin. Let's clean this up. Got a lot going on here. Switch to daily because I'm sure we have daily structure. Okay, so this right away stands out to me. One failed attempt on daily. Could this be a second failed attempt on daily? I mentioned this last time, that when a token attempts all-time highs again, be on the lookout for signs of that, because this is immediately, it got up here, failed the level. People that bought somewhere here rode all the way down. All of a sudden, oh, look, I'm back near all-time highs, or that they rode this and didn't sell all-time highs. They're going to be looking to exit. Like, you just have to think about psychology. So I'll be watching for signs of this daily candle to see what happens. Now, what's interesting is that an H12 close above. Ooh, okay, so you did get an H12 close above here. Trouble is demand is all the way down here, but I would keep, let's see, we have another swing high here. And you can see how, so when I'm looking for swing highs, I'm not just picking any one at random. I was looking for the legit swing high that was created. And look at how in the future that acts as this area of support or resistance, right? Came up in there, tagged. Once it closed below, it rejected off of it. Now we're above it. So you would think actually that this is a pretty important level because of how much interaction it's had. So I think if it comes back down to this area on Ginnin, not a bad area to look for, especially given you got the H12 close above. I'm still very aware of what's happening here on daily, though, in that analysis. H4, you're getting close above. In a moment like this, though, I would put more emphasis on the higher time frame. I mean, you could be looking for trades. Look, we've had sweeps. We've had multiple sweeps down here on this area. And your H4 range is really here. Oh, no. Your H4 range was, the swing point is really low. So if it starts getting back down around here, I suspect if it gets here, it's probably going to have a bounce, just given how important that level clearly was. See, it closed above, retested and went. So I think if it comes back down here, at the moment, you're kind of just, this is starting to look like distribution, right? Like you're getting a lot of gets up there, sells off, gets up there, sells off, right? Which is people with entries much lower looking to take profits. Doesn't mean it's over for this coin by any means, because you're still, monitoring what's occurring. I mean, this to me, on daily especially, this large wick, depending on how it closes, could be very telling. But we'll have to see when the close comes in. For now, if you want to try and take a punt at this, if you're not in from lower, look for something here. If you're in from lower and you're like, oh, I don't want to give back those gains, if it starts losing this level, I'd be more willing to lose. Or if it comes back up in here and starts giving me some wicks, I'd try and cut as close up there as possible. Trouble with cutting if it starts closing below here is it could just very well hit here and then bounce, right? So you kind of have to be nimble on this one. Moving along. Oh, and we can also, we can throw up some fibs on these things too. I don't always throw up fibs. I try to be mostly reliant on my primary analysis, but I mean, what did it come down from the first attempt? Look at that, 786, boom. Does it do something like that again? I don't know. Depends on how much mind share it maintains. I would look to see how strong Nero on ETH is being, things like that. Oh, Jesus Minion, this was the one from the picture. Had a really, aggressive sell-on after launch. But look at this. Like we can come in here and be like, okay, say you see a token like this really early and you're like, oh, that's kind of fun. How do I get on board? Like if you're not just like bottom buying down here, thinking, okay, the risk reward is pretty good because it's so low, like how much am I going to really lose? Well, as soon as it claimed this swing high on M15, it was probably even an hourly level. Yeah. It got the close above. It was probably a good signal that it wanted to go higher. But where are we now? So actually, if you look at this, right now, we're in M15 demand. Or not right now, but it tagged M15 demand. Now it tagged it a few times and came deep into it before finding the reversal. So that's something they have to contend with. I find with Solana, more often than not, it will test the extreme ends of the range. That was something that I learned early on when I first started trading on Solana, because on ETH, you can often, set bids near the top of a demand zone. But I learned really quickly on Solana that just be patient because you're probably going to get low. It's not always going to happen. And if you don't get the ultimate bottom on Solana, as soon as it starts reclaiming an area, you could look to enter, which it actually kind of gave here, right? So that's kind of interesting. I think M15 wise, definitely reclaimed. There was the range, broke above, come down into this demand area. Whether this holds or not is a different story. Would have to look into how popular the meme's maintaining, but there is a trade here. It pretty quickly. Okay, smoking chicken fish. Oh, you know what, guys? I have to go to the bathroom. Give me 2 seconds. I'll just put I'll put some music on for a second. I'll be right back. Okay, I'm back. Let's take a look at smoking chicken fish. You guys all doing all right? Still got, baker's dozen of you all in here. Sticking with me. Also got to say, I appreciate everyone that showed up, everyone that's been tuning in for these, and that people that have been submitting chart requests and questions. Really appreciate the support. And again, these are my ultimate goal for these is to be, 2 to 3 times a week at minimum. So I appreciate you guys showing up, and I anytime you have questions about what it is that I'm doing or what it is that I look for, always feel free to ask. So, smoking chicken fish. Let's get rid of the fibs to start. So, 4 days ago, you actually got a daily structure shift to bearish. And I think when we were talking about this on stream, actually, I said, if you start getting an H4 close, because I think when we were doing the last stream, we were here. We were somewhere in here. And I believe I said, if we start getting an H4 close below here, it's probably a sign that maybe it wants to go lower. Now, it reclaimed and went up first, but then it's come back down. But you can see how this demand, as soon as it flipped, acted as overhead supply. And I said, once it loses that, I would shift my attention to see what happens with this lower demand. But my primary is always the demand that it's working on at the moment. And what happened? It came down into the lower demand and had a response. I believe that also lines up with one of the fibs. Yeah, so it came down and touched the pocket and had a good reaction from it. Now, the reason why I use fibs, it's not because there's any magical technical aspect to it other than people use fibs, right? Like, if you know that, say you're playing a game, say you're playing sports, and you know that your opponent is going to be using these tools. Well, if you have access to those tools, you would want to be using the same equipment or tools as they are at a minimum, so that you can understand what it is that they're looking for. It's like watching game footage, of another team. You're trying to review how it is that they play things so that you can try and plan accordingly. And we all know with memes, majority of participants trading memes have almost no knowledge about TA, and that's, neither here nor there. It's just not something that a lot of people take the time to learn. So what often happens is fibs become very important because that's what people are looking at. Now, where they become super powerful is when you incorporate different techniques and systems in place to help give you an extra edge over that. Because believe it or not, even if they don't know TA, the psychological aspect of losing an area weighs a toll, especially you had people buying all of this, right? Like green only happens when people are buying. Well, people bought from 68 million all the way up to 140 million. And now all of a sudden you have people from 140 million, as soon as it loses 60 million, they're down 50% plus, thinking, okay, well, this gets a bounce. I'm going to try and get as close to break even as possible, which is why these things work. So, fibs are great, and I use them frequently, especially for on-chain memes. They work quite wonderfully. But in an instance like this, the trade that was possible was knowing buying's probably going to step in here. If not here, then you had the 786 just a little bit lower. Buying's probably going to step in here, but my target would be, once it gets back up into this area, to look for signs of weakness, which, it came into this previous level, which is now acting as resistance. It flipped the high, lost it. Now it's acting as resistance up there, which lies within this now supply area. So in my mind, I'm thinking, okay, if I bought down here somewhere, if I'm getting up into here, look at that. You have more than a 2x. Like, there's a great trade. You don't have to be buying here and thinking, oh, I'm going to ride this thing to $1 billion. Who knows which one of these coins is going to go to $1 billion? And I'm not the person to tell you, buy this thing and ride it out the entire cycle and try and catch those moves. What this is just a repeatable system that, when executed almost robotically, can provide a lasting income. I mean, these are techniques that you can use on any financial instrument. You can trade any market with these, with enough practice and time behind the chart and learning the nuance of that particular trading environment. These are things that you can apply anywhere. So, could you buy here and hope to go back to the top? Sure. But I was actually telling a buddy of mine, Too Tall, good friend of mine, over here. Now, it was early, but I was like, this kind of is starting to look like distribution to me. It was taking a while, especially, you're on H12. It ended up going higher, and great, but the signs were kind of there that maybe it's losing steam. Now, this also coincided with the massive market drawdown. So take that for what it is, but let's move along a little bit, though. So if anyone's looking at this going, I guess my question would be, are you looking at this as a holder? Like, I don't, like, the thing is, when I'm answering these questions is, where are you entered from, or are you looking to enter? I guess that's something that I can add in the request channel in the future as a point, is when you're requesting these charts, give me a little bit of context. Are you looking to enter the coin, or are you wondering what you should do if you're in the coin, and whether you're underwater or up big, but not sure how much more topside it has? Because as it stands right now, like, this trade has occurred. Will this hold here now? I'm not too sure. Let's eliminate all of this, and let's go to lower time frames to see what we have here. So on lower time frame, immediately I see here's your H4 range. Right? This is your H4 range. It tested the highs. Now, why is this the range and not this here, the bottom? Well, because once it broke structure, which was here, it closed below here, your new range was a bearish structure from here to here. The swing high that created the lower low once it closed below here. And why do I say here? Well, this is the swing low on H4 that created the high. You can see it's above, that closes above all other swing points. So that was your bullish range. It came down into demand and tagged a little bit, but was showing weak signs. So if you're in from much lower and you're looking for a way to TP or to exit, you're looking at H4. So generally speaking, do most of your analysis on 2, maybe 3 time frames. Now this adjusts as a chart gets more history. And I keep saying, like, I prefer higher time frames for primary analysis. So your dailies, your weeklies, your H12s, stuff like that. But on a newer coin, you're not going to have that. As we've looked at a few charts today on daily, there's no structure. Even on H12, there's no structure. You start getting structure on H4 just because they're so new, and there just isn't the areas, the swing points yet to give you that structure. But on a coin like SCF, which has daily, H12, H4. So what you want to do is keep your analysis to 2 to 3 primary time frames. And what that means is highest time frame for your primary analysis to understand the overall market structure. And then a lower time frame, say from daily, you look at H4 or H1 to look for your entry triggers. As we saw a few charts ago on, what was it? We were looking at BTW and how it gave those early triggers on lower time frame, right? So what you're doing is you're doing a primary analysis on high time frame. Here, H12, bearish structure, right? Lower time frames to look for your triggers. So we have an H4 range here. It traded from the bottom of the range to the top, closed as a sweep. My general thinking would be you trade bottom of the range, top of the range. More often than not, you're going to revisit the bottom of the range, especially since we're seeing signs. Like I said, this was not the range low, but look, you've got areas now that's acting as supply or resistance because people bought here thinking, oh my God, we're going back to all-time highs. Well, as soon as it closes below, these people here are like, well, fuck, I'm going to cut and get out because I want to preserve capital. So my instinct would say, we're getting sweeps here on 4 hour. 4 hours, decent signal. It's like your M5s, M15s, even hourly on a daily chart where it becomes less signal and more noise. But, this could be a reason to either stay in the trade or it's like, this is the definition of diddling in the middle, right? Here, you can see if I draw the fibs here, we're legitimately in the middle, which is this purple line here in the middle of the range. Like, it doesn't get any clearer than that. So I would not be looking to buy here personally because it's 50-50 whether it goes here or here, right? If you're in this coin and you're like, oh, I didn't sell this, I was in from somewhere over here, and I didn't sell this just now, you're in a bit of a tough spot because your downside risk is all the way down here before you're fully invalidated. But it could go either way. So only way to play this is you either accept that you accept that you could come all the way back down to here and hope that once it gets here, it puts in a sweep and goes higher, or if it gets here. Or you say, okay, my trade's done, I'm going to move on for now, because the tension is diminishing on this coin. Like, it was really hot for a while. And this could be but it could be one of those ones that just the cult stays strong. Like, these are all factors. These are things that the chart doesn't tell you. The only thing that the chart told you about this was that people lost confidence in it at some point because of broader market conditions. Because the cult was super strong and then all of a sudden you're not so cultish when you lose structure, right? Good buddy of mine, DJ Liam. When face cam? Never. Never. You got this though. You can have this one. There you go. You got that little guy right there. Or we can go. There we go. There's the face cam. Good to see you, Liam. Thanks for coming out, buddy. Okay, I have a question here. Do you make more money on older coins due to a higher conviction since you use the higher time frames? On higher time frame, you can go in with larger size because you're waiting for those points, and it's not as much of a gamble, especially if the coin has lasted over a certain threshold. If it's a new coin, the rug risk is there, the attention risk is there. For older coins, like there's a threshold, because if it's an older coin that's been on a downtrend, but then it reclaims a daily level, then the confidence goes way up. If it's a semi-new coin, meaning 2, 3, 5, 10 days old kind of thing, and it comes down into a demand area, I mean, your confidence is also pretty high because you're buying with the trend. And given that the attention is still high on the token, I mean, you have to make sure that your volumes are still there on a daily basis, like your 24-hour volumes. If your 24-hour volume for the first couple of days was in the millions, and then all of a sudden it's like a couple 100,000, confidence goes down a little bit. But if you're hitting those high time frame setups, more often than not, you're going to get a bounce there. And if you can buy as close to the invalidation point as possible, then your downside risk is incredibly minimized. So you can go in with larger size, but be ready to cut if it starts to go against you, and just protect the capital that you've put into it, because you don't want to be losing. Now, the tough thing about memes is, depending on where you enter, even within a high time frame area, is that demand area or demand zone can still be like a 40% spread. So that's why buying as close to the bottom as possible is to your best interests. But what you do is you say, so if you're into a daily area of demand, you just go down to your lower time frames, switch down to H4, switch down to an hourly. I mean, even M15, and you just start looking for signs of acceptance in the other direction. Now, you're not going to get the Pico low on that, and sometimes you may not even get an entry. You may just spike it and then immediately send. These are all things you have to be sort of adaptable to. But on a higher time frame area of interest, you can go in with a larger size because you're buying with the trend still, and also at an area that a good chunk of the market is going to be monitoring. I mean, I may have said that, a lot of Solana meme traders don't really look at TA or have too firm a grasp on it, but the higher the market cap goes and the more attention the token has, the better quality of traders start to enter the token. Especially when it's a token that's been respecting levels very well. You can immediately tell the type of traders that are in a coin. Can you check? What is this? So yeah, hopefully that answered your question there, Hermit. Can you check out Rage? Looking to get in. Is that a token? I'll take a look in a little bit. I'm going to try and push through on some of these because we're at an hour. Sorry about that, guys. Hold on a sec. What happened to me here? 1 second. Can you guys still hear me? Sorry, I just pushed the wrong button for a second. There we go. Can you guys still hear me? I made a mistake there. I pushed the wrong button. Let's get back on present. There we go. And we're back. Okay, so, I mean, that's where we are on this. We're smoking chicken fishes out right now is in the middle of a range. Not really a trade to be had. Like, you're not trying to enter here. At least for me, I wouldn't be looking to enter here. If it comes back down here and it's giving signs that it, even if it just comes down here, maybe worth the punt because it's already bounced from there. Your invalidation is clear. Put a punt in down there. If it closes below, starts to close below, you cut. From here, if you get a close above this level on H4, then you're back into bullish structure on H4. And then, if you're already in, you continue to hold. If you're looking for a way to get in on a bullish reclaim, well, you look for a close above here, and then you buy it somewhere down into here as your higher low. But at the moment, to me, there's not a trade here. Okay, we already did Billy. I don't know if anyone actually requested this one, or if I just added it because it was a pretty bullish token on ETH yesterday. Excuse me. So maybe I'll just, and it's some sort of Milady derivative. Don't know much about it other than I know that it was airdropped to some of the Milady Niqab NFT holders, which is apparently one of their elite NFTs in their system, more of a rare one. Just looking at this quickly, so you had H4 or H1, you swing high, closed above. Now it's retesting demand. Right? There's your demand for H1. And again, like if people are looking at this, like, what is it I'm looking for? Well, I'm looking for the swing low that goes on to create the high, creating a higher high above the previous swing high level. And I'm looking for areas where there was consolidation, chop. Generally speaking, it's a down move prior to that move up, but it can also be a cluster depending on how you draw it out. Sometimes I might draw it like that. I mean, on a coin like this, we have a little bit of a benefit of hindsight to see where it's bounced now, but I draw these things live as they're occurring. So, here's your range. This is actually probably a decent area for a bid. Not probably. I mean, it is. Your risk is defined. You've had a sweep this low. Looks like, it's putting in the sweep here. It's bounced. Your risk is defined because you close below here. You just get out. Fibs probably with the 7/8. Oh, look at that. Right on the 7/8. I mean, your risk to reward here is pretty good. I would just be wondering, is this an official coin? I don't think it is. How does the community from Miladies, etc., think about the coin? But your risk reward here is pretty good. That's better. Sorry. Okay, moving on. This was another ETH coin that had been strong. Onigiri. Swing point. What are we on? We're on daily. Okay, so you've got daily structure here. Daily demands down here. It's sort of tagged it now, giving a little bit of a response. I would probably wait to see if it comes further deeper into the demand zone, though, to be honest with you. On H12, so you draw out a daily demand, you can start putting into like a tightened demand area. And by that, what I mean is right here, we can see we have a swing low here. So like if I'm looking for a tighter area, it's not that much tighter, but you save yourself, what is that like? You're saving yourself a 40% move. So it's significant, right? So if you try to be like, okay, I want to try and buy in here, lose below that. But the thing is, you have to be cognizant of the fact that you're still holding daily demand. So I would look for a tighter entry that way. You go down to H4. Look at that. We have here too, but this is a whole cluster. So this whole area could act as support. I also see there's okay. Now on H4, if it loses this level, you're in H4 bear structure because there's the low that created the high. It's testing it now. So your risk reward is actually pretty good here. Because if it closes below this, your H4, you've lost structure. Doesn't mean that you're going to lose daily structure from there, but it does mean that your risk is defined on this particular trade on a 4-hour chart. It's a newer token, so you could base your trade off of 4-hour. Perfectly acceptable. Okay, moving on. Aura. I know someone, I believe it was Power Naps. He requested a few. He requested Aura, Zoomer. I believe yours was also a request for Billy. So we did Billy already. Let's do Aura. Let's take a look here. Excuse me. Okay. Interesting. So let's clean it up. Let's remove all this. First of all, this was ugly. As soon as you got that, I'd be like, ugh. I don't know that I want to hold this coin anymore. Let's get a couple of those areas marked out. We got wrong tool. We got our all-time high here. We have an area there. Well, okay, so we can see how important this level is, right? It was a swing level. It was the all-time high at one point. Struggled with it, closed above, came back down, tagged demand, sent. Now, it's closed below it, and it's acting as overhead resistance, right? But another thing that I can see, so this was the daily demand. As soon as it lost the level, that immediately became supply. And often when a demand zone gets flipped bearish, that zone typically acts as the supply and resistance. I mean, the true supply is up here, all the way up here. Like it could come all the way up to here on this daily structure or this daily range. It could reject here before going lower, but it's seeing it immediately here. But often when a supply zone is flipped bullish, it turns into demand. And what that is called is a bullish breaker. And which by that, it just means it's broken that and it becomes bullish, right? So it was a bullish demand zone, lost the level, it's flipped to a bearish breaker, which is you're seeing signs here of rejection. Now it's been holding pretty tight here. So you could think to yourself, okay, maybe this is going to hold. Let's draw out the daily range. There's your daily range. Power naps. What was your question related to on this token? I believe you had said that you were debating whether you should hold or not. Can you just confirm that with me? Or what it was you were trying to do, if you're still there? Because this has been a really strong token. But you can also see, like, this is a definition of a parabola, right? You know, long period of consolidation, right? It struggled here for a while. Although, if I recall correctly, on the move up, this whole area here was, yeah, a while back when we were trading this one early. This is what we were watching, was this area here. Now, I don't love meme lines. I've mentioned that before, diagonals. But when they're obvious, you know, it was way more dramatic when there wasn't all this price history. It was like on an angle upwards. But yeah, to me, parabola is broken. Daily trend lost. I mean, we've seen these charts play out so many times before. Parabola broken, might have a complacency bounce, but then there's a large chance it just does this for a while. Now, it could hold here. I mean, I can't predict. I can never predict. I just get probabilities, right? Like that's all the system is based around of is probability for higher or probability for lower. I think for me, even though this is the range and it's bearish, I think if it can recapture 30 million, like if it can get a convincing close above here, you start to look better, but you still have to be aware that you run the risk of this rejecting somewhere in here. Just grabbed it. Okay, so Power Naps asked whether he should cut or not. And he says he's down a bit on it. Grabbed it a couple days ago. You have to ask yourself, what would your invalidation be? I mean, if you're already, like, say you were buying as it was approaching here, is what I'm guessing you did, into that green there. Like, say if I was buying into this, thinking, okay, it's got strength here. And if you lose this level, I mean, it's painful to say because, you know, it's a bit of distance you have to go and you're going to, you know, be down some more. I would be wondering what happens if when it gets back down here. Now, looking at these candles here, like, this to me says it wants to, like, it's just giving me that heavy vibe. But I would watch what happens here. 100% would close the position if you lose this level. Let's take a look on lower time frame. I mean, even H4, you got overhead supply rejection, right? Like, this was your range on H4, came up into here, and rejected, right? Because there was your supply. So your best case scenario is it comes down here and sweeps. Looking for signs on H4 to begin with, because hourly is going to be a lot of noise right now. Like, look how choppy this is, right? Like, you had an hourly. I mean, no, because your range was still here, so you were still in bearish range. So you're expecting in this area, even though you had, you know, a close above here, that doesn't make it bullish, right? Because your overall trend was still bearish there. So I would wait to see, because there's a chance it comes here, sweeps, and then, you know, I do think that some of the attention has gone away from all these culture coins. And there was a lot of blood across those. It's a type of situation where you have to ask yourself, like, okay, who are the teams behind this? Do I still believe in the vision? Do I want to be a community member and a bag holder? Or do I just want to wait until this thing shows me signs that it's bullish? I 100%, if it loses here, would cut. Beyond that, reclaiming this level will give me more confidence that it wants to go higher, but then being aware of here. Okay, and we'll get to your other one since it was another one of your requests, Zoomer. Okay, I mean, it's clearly lost daily trend. Saunders is a buddy of mine, and he's done amazing things for this coin, bull posting it and building the team, and, you know, getting content together from creators and really onboarding people, and it's had quite a good run, you know. But I also look at it and I see, okay, this was not as much of a parabola because it actually built in stair steps of support, which was great, but it's lost quite a few of those areas now. So where's your range? So your range right now, this is your daily range. Oops, not there. This is your daily range, and it's quite large, you know. What I suspect is going to happen is it's going to chop around here for a while. It may retest this low, but I suspect, especially since I know he's not giving up on it, I don't like to have biases about coins when I do analysis, so I'll try and reserve from that one on this one. I don't currently have a position in this, so I'm not biased that way. But I do know that he's committed to continue trying to grow this token. I think if this chops around here for a while, then all of a sudden I'd be looking at this area here as a shift to bullish structure. But it's going to take days, I think, before I can say that definitively, because right now this is your range and it's bearish. As soon as it closed below here, right? The low that created the high. So as soon as it closed below here, and you can see it closed below, demand was flipped into supply, tagged, underside tagged, sold off. And okay, so I would be aware of this too. You have multiple levels here that it's swept. Successful sweeps so far, but if it starts closing below there, or closing below here, they're very close together, so it's difficult to say if it sweeps one but not the other, whether that's bullish or not. But I would be aware of those levels there, because if it closes below those, you're losing a lot of structural points. Like even it's lost this, and that's acting as resistance right now. So, I mean, I hate giving this sort of analysis to someone that's in a token, but there's a lot of signs there that this is heavy. But it's also crypto, like it could just tomorrow you wake up and you're like, holy shit, we're up here. So just based off of levels analysis though, like I'm very aware of what's happening here. I don't even want to throw up a fib on this because it's got so much chart history that I don't think fibs are as useful on this. Like we can see. What did it tag? So, I mean, 786, glorious 786, but then the pocket's acting as resistance. But I would just watch what happens with these levels here. Because if you start losing these, and right now you're in danger of that, but you're also 5 hours away from daily close. So there's a lot of time, but I would watch what it does there. Because if you start losing more levels, then all of a sudden you're building in even more supply. Because right now people have been like, okay, I'm going to step in here. This to me is where I think is a good discounted value on this token. Yeah, that's what I'd watch for. Yeah, I mean, 100%, that's why I personally, like, I have rules that I just don't join telegrams of tokens generally, because I don't like being skewed based off of that, although it's good to know what the communities are looking like and stuff like that and how active they are. But having a bias isn't great, unless you're in from like 10K market cap on a token that you just think you have the runway to allow it to breathe. Like holding a bias on a coin, I mean, last cycle that cost me a lot of money, mostly because I didn't really know any better. But just round tripping tokens and being like trying to DCA in and making all those early mistakes that we all go through. Okay, so that was Zoomer. Okay, I think we've got 1, 2, 3 more. I think I added more, so I don't think there's any point to go in there. And truthfully, base needs a lot of work before I get bullish on them again. I'm pretty sure Penn has added this one to one of his bull tokens, so there's potential there. But until base starts showing signs of life, it's kind of a waste of time to me at the moment. So someone requested coconut. Looks like I charted this one before. It just missed. Look at that. Just missed demand there. Front ran it by a little bit. At least on this one. Although, actually, it had it there, tagged down into it. But the range was, well, the bullish range was from here. So, okay, anyways, on to where we're at now. Throw out the first couple important levels I see. This is going to be another one. Right, you had your daily that closed above, came back in, tagged this demand, bottom tipped it, and up. So if this closes daily above here, really good sign. And then I'd look for an entry somewhere down in here. It's looking really strong, and I know there's a lot of news surrounding her polls improving and whatnot, and yada, yada, yada. I mean, I'm not going to get into politics on this show. We're just here for charts. I'll leave that up to each of you. But if I were to draw out the next demand, say this closes bullish, this is what I'd look at. It's already tagged it, but a higher low has to form somewhere at some point. So it would either be a retag of this area. That's the new breakout level. You may just come in and tag there and go, or down into there. But then I'd also be very aware that if it loses this level on daily, oh, this is H12. If it loses, let's see what daily looks like. Okay, I'm going to, well, okay. This is daily demand here, if it closes above this level. So I think H12 is more appropriate on this one, just given it has a little bit more history. Yeah, if it loses that level, not ideal, but we're nowhere near there. You got a lot of room here. So say, okay, this thing's been bullish. What would, if I was like trying to hop on this as a trade short term? I mean, there's your hourly higher high. Right? It's sort of retesting it now. It can realistically come all the way down into around here for finding the higher low, or that may be the extent. You can go even lower time frame. Yeah, see, it's hitting M15 demand. So this has a lot of momentum right now. Okay, say you see something break out like that, and you're like, oh my God, I need to get on this token immediately. Like the train is leaving the station. How the fuck do I get on this thing? I would switch down to lower time frame and just trade that specific part of the chart in front of me, and I wouldn't worry too much about what had happened over on the left if the thing is super bullish. So like what happened on here? Okay, so it had an M15 breaking structure right here. Here was the top of your range on M15. Price closed above, came down, and retagged into this area. Now, you kind of have to just fire a shot at something like that, right? But look, like there's where it reclaimed, sort of came into here. So you kind of just got to take stabs at something like that if you think that it's going to continue being bullish. I mean, not a huge move off of it yet. But you have to move quick on things like this, right? Like another sign could have been this, like it's double dipping into, I mean, it wouldn't have quite been demand yet because we're still waiting for that candle to close. But those are things that I'd look for. Like if something has momentum and I'm like, how the hell do I get on board this? I mean, even here, right? Like there was a higher high, a demand area here, probably better on H1. Yeah, there was demand there. Tagging it, tagging it, tagging it. If you buy as close to the bottom where you're invalidated, like you don't have too much stress because you start closing below, you just get out for as little, small of a ding as possible from down there. But tagged and sent. So you had to start looking lower time frames on these things to find an entry when they're moving that quickly, but also being aware that what goes up rapidly can also come down rapidly. So it's it's a decent sized market cap, decent liquidity. So you could have had, and it's in narrative. She's got momentum behind her right now. Okay, so we've gotten to the 2-hour mark. Given that I was a little bit late to the stream, we're probably like another 15 minutes till we've hit 2 hours. I think there's only 2 more coins to get through here. Dog riding chicken, this was someone requested. Hilarious name for a token. I guess it's sort of, well, judging by this, it's sort of going off the smoking chicken fish sort of narrative. The thing with a token like this, which is in that sort of beta or even just derivative land, is that it tends to be heavily reliant on the primary token doing well. I mean, what I would say, because there's not much chart history and it's sort of difficult to go by. I mean, you lost M15 here, and then it gave an underside. But it's sort of holding this range. Yeah, it's sold below a little bit. I think your risk reward around here, though, isn't bad. Like, something like this is a little bit harder to chart because how important is the SCF narrative to a coin like this? I don't know. But given that it is a derivative, when was this? This was yesterday. So maybe it's riding on its own narrative then, because SCF is already looking like shit yesterday. I would watch this level. Yes, you have a range here. Like, you have an hourly range. What is this? If you're in this coin already, just wait to see what happens, and hopefully it goes up to here. And if it can reclaim that, go back to highs. While also being aware of other levels that it's failed at. You know, you had sweep, swing fails here. So, you know, be on the lookout for certain levels that it's had price responses to. I think if you can buy down, back, and around here again, might be worth it. Oh, below the 786, which you can see how it's interacting with it, right? Close below, underside. It's tempting it right now. 24-hour volume still decent. I don't know. Is the narrative here for this coin still? That's not my area of expertise, but yeah, this is a tough one because there's such limited structure, especially on this side of the chart, that I don't really have much to go off of. Oh, well, it did come in and tag this level. No, not there. Here, like perfectly. So I think if you get something that comes back down into here, I mean, it's made an hourly higher high, or sorry, an M15 higher high. Low signal, but it has done that, and it's so far tagged this demand here, and it's showing signs of a bounce. It's another case of in the middle of the range, though. So, like, if you're in the trade, oh, getting the bounce there. So if you're in the trade already, ride it out, see what happens here. If you're not in the trade currently, I would either wait for an hourly close above here. You get an hourly close above here. You can look for some sort of retest to buy. I don't know where that'll be yet because we have to see what unfolds. Either wait for an hourly close and buy a retest, or you get a sweep down into here again and just put a punt thinking, okay, it's bounced from there before, maybe it'll bounce again. If you're in, you got to ride it out. If it closes below here, you cut. And the last one was Tau Ceti. Just a massive range. Massive range with Just a lot of chop. 30 million market cap. I'm assuming this is a utility token. Decentralized AI. Are AI tokens hot right now? I don't know. I mean, I haven't been too bullish utility for a while, but I don't want to let that bias in my analysis. Let's see, do we have weekly? Okay. So you got a weekly. It's not a typical looking sort of higher high because you still have this that you're trading within, but you are starting to see some signs of strength, right? Like here's weekly demand, which is tagged, showing some strength. Daily, it also came into demand right there with I mean, that wick is quite impressive. Like that showed a lot of people were waiting for their probably limit orders, came down in, limit orders triggered. Structurally looks fine. I don't love that it's just like this whole sideways chop thing because, you know, this could very well just do this and come back down and chop some more. Yeah, like even if we look here, there was the daily swing high. This was your range because it closed below these swing points. Like it's not structurally what I typically look for as a range, but that was your range. It closed above and then it closed below. You know, it's a lot of chop when it closed down here below. It's been a lot of chop. It's showing signs of strength though. It's wanting to try and go higher. I mean, maybe I could see if I'm weekly. There was, yeah, I guess I'm weekly. I would be looking. It's not perfect though. I mean, meme lines never are, but I don't really love when it's that misaligned. Like the meme line needs to be obvious. Like I can see something forming here, but I don't love that it closed below kind of thing. Although I guess it was just a spike because the close closed around and it spiked. And so, yeah, I'd say that's acceptable. And look at that where it, you know, I would be looking. What's your daily range? Your daily range is this. This is your daily range ultimately. I think just because the meme line's kind of obvious, anything that comes down into here, it's probably worth a bid. It closed below here. Troubling, given how strong this reaction was. If it gives all this back and then starts closing below here, not a great sign. What's H12 doing? I mean, H12, you've lost some levels, right? Like, look, I lost that, and then that's exactly where it rejected from, right? Right, lost the H12 underside tagged, but it's maintained the daily. It's also lost this here on H12. So there are some levels of supply that have now been built in to the structure. It's a slow cook though. Like look how many, this has been essentially in the same range. You've essentially been trading, and look at that. I don't love doing this, but like that's your highest weekly close. If I'm just going to box out a weekly range, would I even call this the bottom? I guess, but I kind of think that's your weekly range because it closed below. Recaptured, it didn't retest, but came pretty close and then went to the other side. It's been trading in the same range since March. So like at some point it's going to resolve one way or the other. I'd get bullish on this with a weekly close above here, but aware that if it immediately closes back below, it's probably going to come back down to the bottom of the range. for now, cautiously bullish. Okay. So that was the entirety of the requests for this week. We've already gone to 2 hours. We're 2.25. I think what we'll do is, rather than me get into the questions about drawing ranges, because I go through those in every stream, and I'll do that on every token that I look at. We've kind of gone through that. Some of the other questions that were asked was about portfolio management and sizing and whatnot. I think maybe what we can do is we can have a more question and answer type show where we'll do all those sort of things, because I do want to keep this to 2 hours so that people aren't like, oh, this thing is so long. I mean, even 2 hours is long, but it goes by pretty quickly for me. But I'll start looking at these questions, and I apologize that I just don't think it's useful to go into them right now for people that are trying to watch these things quickly. Not that the information isn't useful. I just think we're going a bit long. So what I'll do is either we'll have a show, specifically a sort of a Q&A, and we can run through those things, or the next one, maybe I'll take less requests and we'll just do more of those things based around ChainEDGE workflow and the questions about position sizing and take profit strategies, because I want all those things to be looked at with care and with a good amount of time emphasized on them, so that there's actually valuable information to come from them, and we're not just blowing through it. Looks like someone asked in the astrology Telegram group, saying that Deck Screener doesn't toggle market cap from Munar. Actually, they do. It's a function they just implemented. But I'll answer that in the Telegram. Sorry, I guess I shouldn't cross-communicate like that while we're live on stream. So we'll arrange for a stream more specifically geared towards those questions. I can also answer those questions in the Telegram as well. But I think in terms of today's stream, let's cap it off here. We got through a bunch of tokens. Market's feeling better overall. BTC up 8.5%, ETH almost 10.5%, Solana almost 8%. I mean, we're feeling a little bit healthier than we did the other day. Candles are looking bullish. Onchain's doing pretty bullish. So let's just wrap it up around there. I want to thank everyone that joined during the stream and everyone that watches this in a replay. Again, this is Astrology for Men. My name is 0xRapture, brought to you by the Daily Edge. Reminder to check out and subscribe to our newsletters. thedailyedge.com/subscribe, which is a daily newsletter for free that gets sent out with actionable intel and insights from Onchain Wizard. A reminder to like, subscribe, and comment if you're enjoying these shows. It helps us to grow and tells us that we're doing something good, that you're finding of value. All links are in the description below for the Daily Edge Telegram, the Daily Edge Twitter account, the ChainEDGE Twitter account, my Twitter account, Onchain Wizard's Twitter account, the links for ChainEDGE itself. What else? Oh, yes. And also, if you feel like you're looking for a new trading platform and you'd like to support the work that I'm doing here, give BullX a try. There's a ref link in the description below that saves you 10% off the trading fees, as well as gives me a little bit of a kickback to try and keep the show up and running. It's nothing crazy. And it's not an official affiliation whatsoever. It's just my personal BullX ref link. It's in the description. So if you are looking for a new trading platform, a terminal, it's desktop-based, with a lot of great features that most other terminals don't have, give them a check. and give them a shot. And that's about that. Once again, thank you for watching Astrology for Men. I am 0xRapture, and I appreciate each and every one of you. Until next time, bye.